Okay, I'm gonna try to not geek out as I normally do in these introductions, but
And I will also try to hide my abundant enthusiasm for talking to such a pillar of culture
it it
as
is so
yourself.
it is so weird that our very first exchange is going to be in front of millions of people. I will try to keep my composure and my professionalism. All right, so basically, ladies and gentlemen of Questlove World uh, listenership. This is one of those air quote dreams come true moments for this podcast. Um, our guest today has a profound effect on my life ever since his 1987 debut, which yielded
Wow.
five, in my opinion, miraculous singles that propelled him to the top of the charts. And it can't be overstated how impressionable he was to me in my life at that particular time because uh at the time I was just about to graduate high school and I was deciding for myself like what is it that I want to do with my life, and clearly um I didn't want to live my dad's dream of respectable politics and entering the world of classical music, but reading our guests mind-blowing interviews. And mind you, like, a lot of my idols in hip hop really weren't given the platform of a Village Voice or of a Spin Magazine or of a Rolling
True.
Stone. Um, so reading his mind-blowing interviews really had an effect on me. Reading his lyrics had an effect. Watching him perform, uh, hearing him sing had an effect. His arrangements, his production, and fun fact, a lot of you are going to be mind blown that are Roots fans. His liner notes, okay, his liner notes, credits, yes, credits and liner notes. Um, I literally didn't know that a Chinese food delivery box could be an instrument. Like, so just his sick sense of humor in music and on his line, like literally longtime Roots fans who still to this day, despite the fact that I've written eight eight. Yeah, eight. And I'm plugging my hip hop is history came out last week as
Plug
of
it,
this
baby.
recording. But my eight New York Times bestsellers, despite the fact that I have eight books, Roots fans complain to this day that, and despite the fact that there are no more tangible, well, not no more, but tangible objects like cassettes or LPs or CDs or 8 tracks is not the primary way that we consume music. To this day, they still ridicule me for not doing epic liner notes, not knowing that our guest is single-handedly responsible um,
Oh, wow.
for that side of my life. Yeah, I'll definitely say 40% responsible. I don't want to dismiss
Okay, I
Dream.
have to cut you off now before you embarrass both of us.
No,
But,
no, man. Let me let
but
me let me just get. I'm gonna get to the end because I know when love is projected, we somehow try to avoid it, like the Matrix.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
You get it.
I get it. And if the other Team Supreme people were here right now, they do the same to me. So, um, but I think it's important that we give flowers and really show respect to the gods. So, um,
I really appreciate that.
no, but literally, because I was aware of his life transformation after his first five records.
Say it's Lenny so I can cuss bitches out and get away with
No, 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 no.
it.
It wasn't until D'Angelo and I were making Black Messiah around like 2011, 2012 that D'Angelo hit me to the fact that I had missed like 7 or 8 albums, and not believing what I heard, I pulled my phone out and realized the mountain of music I had missed, and I have not been the same ever since. I'm so caught up in yes in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Um, I have always wanted to say this. Um, Welcome to Questlove Supreme,
Wow.
Sananda Maitreya. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having us. And also let me say that we're basically two geeks speaking to each other because a lot of what makes us, speaking of us both collectively, what we are is that particular attention to detail that being a geek bestows upon you. Because when you're a geek, it means that you're paying attention to extra things that others are not. And then when
Hmm.
you have a chance to contribute yourself, I mean, I often have said to people, if I write certain things or I do certain things a certain way, I said, these are for the people who are like me when I could thrill a second engineer on a Stevie Wonder record when I met him like 15 years later because I actually knew who he was by his name. Okay. And the fact that you knew what Stevie record it was and everything, and they were like so thrilled. It's like, wow, what a gift to give back to someone simply because I was that kid like you who devoured everything. Okay.
I
If it
feel
was
you.
a P Funk record, if it was a Beatles record, didn't matter. If I got, for me, the only thing I miss about the old vinyl days really is this artwork space.
Yes.
You know, the presentation, you had to make a ta-da, and bring a completely different stamp on the world before, unfortunately, we began to put thoughts in your head as to the context of the song by the videos.
Hmm.
Whereas once upon a time, it was the song meant whatever it triggered in your imagination, that was the video that was created. But
Oh, yes. I want to share something with you that I don't think the world knows, and I can't say her name properly, but there's an artist right now, a very significant artist, who is held back uh releasing videos
yes.
for a particular album, an epic
Hmm.
album. And I found out 4 months ago. Um, Went to go see this particular artist in concert, said how great the show was, and noticed that I saw certain visual clips that weren't out in the world. And this artist tells me, hey, you're actually partly responsible for this. And I was like, what do you mean? So when this artist released a record, I said, what I love about this album is that because there were no videos initially, because of course I thought there was going to be an onslaught of videos, it's a major recording artist. Um, that I said it took me back to the time where when Stevie Wonder's Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants came out.
Yeah, yeah,
That for me was my Dark Side of the Moon. Like my
yeah,
dad hated that record, so he was like, "Here, you take it," and I took it,
yeah.
put the headphones on, and just closed my eyes and imagined, and basically said that like I don't want videos for songs in the key of life or any of Stevie Wonder's 70s records because in my mind I have a picture of what I
Yeah.
see
Yes.
because synesthesia is real.
Yeah.
And I was just making a passing comment that, it was great to experience this record without the videos telling me what to think. And I didn't know that I held that much weight. And I guess on the ride home, that must have been the straw that broke the camel's back to say, hey, we're going to not release videos because I want people to experience the music. And
I remember getting Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants as a Christmas present one year from my aunt who
right.
worked in Sears. So she had to hook up.
Sears. Yes.
And so she got it for me. And I remember I was just on the cusp where I was allowed to listen to stuff inside the house that wasn't gospel. But I remember going out to our car and with my little cassette and just playing it because I absolutely, I mean, if it's not clear, it should be that Stevie was one of the absolute pillars of my entire consciousness
Mhm.
as a musician, as an artist, as anything that I perceive myself to be. He and the Beatles are kind of just right there at the foundation of how I started to envision music. So I loved that album. Sing what you love with a dozen roses.
Mhm.
I mean, and the thing about Stevie was, he was a like the Beatles were for me. He was a master class in all of it. Songs, arrangements, instrumentation. He was a master orchestrator, like Beethoven, this motherfucker. and it was like just the way he brought further dimension of consciousness into the music just by his understanding of sounds and how sounds trigger us alone. It's just not enough is spoken about that. Sometimes I wish um, our brother Stevie was white, just so that he would get much more intellectual
Oh, he was the
depth
Beatles.
of appreciation,
Yes.
because he really, the only peers for me he had on the level that he existed was the Beatles, was like Brian Wilson, like these extremely rare contemporaries who were like the Schubert, Beethoven, Mozarts of their time.
Hmm.
You know, so yeah, I'm with you on it. It's interesting that we have that Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants connection. And also, before we travel further, I want to thank you so much for just your contribution that you've made since the Roots and since first coming out and just expanding your whole like empire of consciousness onto, what for me culminated in this Oscar that I was so happy that you won, and you won
Thank
in
you.
such a memorable year as well.
Yeah.
that that
Yeah. It was a life-changing year for me, man.
because I really appreciated, one of my claims to pride is that I was born the same day as Sly. So, you know, I remember even Prince saying, "You fucker, you and Sly born the same day." I said,
He
ah,
knew that?
yeah, 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 yeah. Um,
Wow.
no, I'm not sure if Sly knew it, but I'm
No, no,
talking
I meant, but
about,
Prince knew that.
yeah,
Oh, okay. There's so much I want to learn about your story and your journey, but it's burning. I've been dying to ask you this question for at least 3 decades. Okay.
yes.
And you already mentioned his name, so I have to ask. Okay. February of 1988.
Hmm.
You are about to walk on stage,
Yes.
and Smokey Robinson's in the audience. Stevie Wonder's in the audience. Bono's in the audience. Michael's in the front row.
With the red fucking jacket that you couldn't miss if you were Stevie Wonder.
Yes. Prince is in the front row. Can you? I've never watched. I think that's the first time where I tried to like channel vicariously. How does a person give a pitch perfect performance? The pillars of gods are literally like in the first three rows
Yeah,
watching you. And
I
the thing
love
is that I know Michael has an attitude because like he's that was also a weird night for him. That
yeah,
was sort of that was the seed of the beginning of
yeah.
his future.
And also the beginning of mine as a
So okay,
consequence.
can you in sound check? I always wanted to know this because when I do award shows and I go sound check, uh, they put those big giant cards on the chairs and you see name,
Yes,
name,
yes.
name. So when you're sound checking, you see like who's going to be watching you. What how did you manage? Because you still gave a pitch perfect performance.
Thank you. Um,
And what was that day like, or was it just so numbing that it wasn't a footnote for you at all? Or
well, first of all, there's the thing is that at some point you do feel that parallel realities are real. I used to explain in the very beginning, what freaked people out most around me was that I had told them exactly what was going to happen, and it did. Because I had this sense even then that what I was going to do, I had already done. But this was just kind of a time shift, or because this dimension is at a slower rate of frequency than the dimension in which I've already done this, it just takes time to manifest. But I just had this, but I've done this already attitude that informed so much of where I was coming from. So, and I say that because sometimes, I mean, still to this day, I can be in the vocal booth singing, and I have this almost out of body experience where I hear that the voice isn't coming from me, it's
Mhm.
coming through me, and I'm basically literally capable of standing in that space where I can see the difference between something that originates from you and something you're just bearing witness to as a witness to a process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of times that happens when it seems like the reality that you're about to walk into is already so surreal that you might as well just have that kind of other dimensional experience. Say this. You grew up watching the Grammys. You grew up dreaming that one day it would be you. Okay. And then, but what you didn't dream is that damn near, like you said, every one of your like heroes would be
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the front row. And at least it distracted you from the millions and millions and millions of people who are watching it. That was like the good thing. They distracted you from it. But during the sound check and what have you, I just don't pay that much attention to those things. I really don't. I focus out, I get my game head together. I understand what I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what I have to do to achieve that level. And one of the things that I did have to do was I always shut people out before the gig. I never saw anyone before a gig. And of course, you get a reputation that people don't understand as being aloof or arrogant or whatever.
Mm-mm. Meditation.
Yeah,
Meditation.
yeah. Put your game face on, get in that zone, call your spirit together, and all of that. But here's the secret. Here's the killer. Fortunately, that gig was in between a tour that we were doing anyway. We were already touring the States.
Mm-hmm.
And before I left London, a fan of mine from California had said, I'm going to be like shipping you something that will be waiting for you when you get to whatever my first destination was, Miami or Orlando or some Daytona, Florida.
Okay.
And so I got there, which is where I took the band to do production rehearsals because I grew up in the Daytona Beach area and I wanted to return there for production rehearsals for the American tour. And so when I got there to Daytona Beach, what was waiting for me but a nice thick packet of shrooms. Okay. So I took the schedule, which I remember was 40 dates, and
Yeah.
I picked about 8 to a dozen that I'm gonna do shrooms here. I'm gonna do a shroom here. I'm gonna do one here. And it was just a crazy great experience. And I had no intention of doing that night. But when I was sitting in the audience and I
Mm-hmm.
could see all the silhouettes and all the people in front of me and just the spectacle that it was, I just thought I should be high. I mean, this is not right. I mean, this is, and I was, and I'm just being honest, I was never like a cocaine guy or heroin guy.
Yeah.
I was into like, even as a child, I understood if it kind of gave you different perspective on some shit.
I
That
think it
was,
brings you closer to God, personally.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
a new microdoser. I started microdosing in like before 2020. Nothing. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. None of that stuff. And then once I started meditating and all that shit, you know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
started
yeah. So,
microdosing, and
so as
so
as I was getting closer to being called, if I'm not mistaken, I think even Madam Whitney performed that night. If I'm
okay,
not mistaken,
yeah,
it was just an onslaught of like just genius bitches, and I was like, okay, look.
yeah,
I turned to my baby mama, my English daughter, Serafina, and I say to her, yeah, hook me up one of them shrooms, right? Right? Because she had brought a few emergency, just
just in
break glass in
case.
case of emergency, you know what I'm saying? And I just said, and she was like, looked at me like, are you sure? I was like, no, 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 give me one of the shrooms. So I took one, went to the bathroom, boom, and next thing you know, I was able to get out of my head and leave that performance because, it was also important for me to address my the heroes that were present, that this is the effect that you have had.
This is what you, dude. I said that. I said, wow. I wonder if they're sitting there thinking, I
We fucked
built
up.
this. No, but not that. But I've felt like because the thing is it's also your thing is so deep. Like it's not even like the world doesn't even know like your version of the microphone tricks isn't James Brown's. Joe Tex. Like literally, people don't know that Joe Tex started that shit. Like the pioneer never gets the credit. Is
Yeah,
always the second person that sees it and
yeah,
perfects it.
yeah,
And James Brown is world famous for his derivative borrowing, but
yeah, yeah,
he's still the god. But even to the level of where you started doing microphone, like in your history of performance, I was like, oh wow, he even knows Joe Tex's like level of microphone mastery.
A lot of that stuff is channeling, really, because it is a collective. Whatever name one is comfortable giving to it, if I'm in a certain comfortable space, I don't mind calling it the Holy Spirit because ultimately that's who I believe, that's who I know I belong in the service of. Okay, I do believe that many of us artists, this is precisely why we're here. I mean, I'm asked often, why are you so prolific or whatever, how you create so easily? I say, the answer is simple. I've never seen myself as separate from the music. I'm an extension of the music. The music is not just a concept, it's a real spirit and it can create life just like a lot of other spirit has the power to create life. So, I just believe that I'm a form of music in a human life. And therefore, there is no separation between me and the muse or the music. It's just at one with my expression. And you know, this is basically what I've always known that I was in the service of because I don't really believe all of these gifts are mine. I believe that that this is my karma and this is my service. And we're selected for our fidelity because everything that I have, everything that I've endured and been able to endure with whatever grace I've been able to summon from the reservoir of mercy is simply by understanding that, I was taught in Sunday school, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. The way I've lived that, the way I've interpreted that in my life is the muse telling me, listen, here's the deal. You serve first and foremost and to the utmost of your fidelity. You serve the music. You serve the inspiration, the spirit that you're given. And we will look after your life. We will find the right woman for you. We will find what you need because we know what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And we know we're not going to give you more than you need to be a distraction from the work that you're taking upon yourself to do. So, all of that's a part of it, and that's what we're in the service of. So basically, yeah, there are moments when it's the same. It's like I rarely will drink or whatever, but if I feel like I need, as any performer, to take a shot of whiskey to just kind of like center myself in the purpose thereof,
Mm-hmm.
that you do what you got to do.
For our listeners that are not aware, where's your beginnings? Like where were you born?
I had the great fortune of being stamped by arrival in the great borough of Harlem in the magnificent year of 1962, the year of the Fender Jaguar, the year of the New York Mets, the year of the Rolling Stones. Okay, there you go, 1962. So, and then I was basically, we were actually my people were from Newark. With some, if in
Word.
fact, I also proudly claim that East Orange connection because, as you would know, East Orange has produced an abundant amounts of bitches that were like making sense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think even Shaquille comes from East Orange, and even my mother's history is kind of wound around Madame Dionne Warwick's what could have been, what happened, what would happen if type history.
Mm-hmm.
So we came from that area, but my mother was the beloved eldest daughter of the big pastor of Newark, the Pentecostal church. And when basically my father seduced her,
Mm-hmm.
it was shame upon your family and all that bullshit. And so basically she was kind of banished to a cousin in Harlem to like who also knew how to take care of her, how to look after her, because my mother's mother died when she was 13. So we were banished into Harlem um, to live with a cousin, and it was basically 2 years after that we moved back to Jersey. So that's where I began, and I'm proud to say I was born in Harlem because it's just one of those vortexes on the earth that if you have that fortune to be able to do something with that stamp, you're a blessed person indeed.
Do you remember what was your first musical memory in life?
The Beatles. I was 2 years old, and it's the first not only musical memory, it's my first memory. Um, I would imagine the thought. I almost vaguely think I remember a picture of my father being banished from my life, my biological father.
Hmm.
But obviously, I would have suppressed that if it was a negative emotion. But at the age of 2, I remember she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And oh, you, I'll tell you something. Da, 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 hope you understand. I want to hold your hand and she loves you. That is the earliest memory I have. And I just think it's so awesome that it was a musical memory as well. Because nothing, that was the music that woke up my consciousness to the fact that I was existing in that life. So that was my first memory. I also remember seeing Breakfast at Tiffany's on television when it came on in 1964, I think. It was
Hmm.
also two or somewhere around thereabouts. And I remember my mother buying me some Batman cards because that was my first hero was Batman. So those memories around the same time, they were all East Orange, New Jersey memories.
Um, how long were you a resident in Harlem?
I think no more than 2 years. I think my first 2 years, you know,
But I mean, what about New York? Like just the general tri-state area. Like how long were you there?
well, we were there until I was about 6 or 7 when we moved to Florida for the first
Okay.
time. Then we moved back um to Jersey. Then we moved to Chicago, and we moved around a lot. I was
Okay.
my stepfather was a first an evangelist and a minister, and then later became a pastor and all that. So we were moving around a lot. Plus, it was just the way I guess the organization he was a part of was growing at the time.
Okay.
So, but obviously things happen to us for a purpose, which hopefully we can extract the better reasons of or
Okay.
reasons for. Um, but
Were they a musical family as well? Like, do you have siblings that sing as well, or
yes, everybody kind of sings, but my mother is mainly the one who sang, and it was apparently her mother who I sound most like or looked most like because her mother was um I'm quite sure there was some hidden Sephardic Judaism that was hidden in the situation coming
hmm
back from the times of the Spanish and the
hmm
the Reconquista or whatever the hell it was the
the
but
family tree? Yeah, I get it.
yeah but
Yeah.
anyway there are a lot of similarities apparently between me and her mother, but it's my mother from whom I get kind of that impetus. She grew up singing in the church.
Most of my the artists that I interview that are at least of a certain age kind of have the same story in which uh quote unquote secular music is contraband or not
Yeah.
looked favorably upon. So how are you consuming well, our listeners know like being a Prince fan was almost like detrimental to my life. And it's funny to hear him say like your parents were right to punish you for owning these records. But like were you allowed to purchase albums or how did you some artists would say like, oh, Marvin and Stevie were allowed, but nothing else. Like how do you consume music? Are your friends in school telling you like what's hip or
No, basically, you're in a culture where everything is around you. And what I wasn't allowed to do until I was about 15 or 16 was to listen to music in our house that I
the
brought in
house?
from the outside. But at some point, on a Saturday when in my area, Soul Train and American Bandstand were back to back.
Yeah,
So if I remember correctly, Soul Train came on at 12 and at 12:30 American Bandstand.
bandstand.
And I was
Yeah.
allowed that at some point, provided, I kept the noise down and what have you. Um, but you just heard everywhere else, what was happening, what was around you. And there were people that were just ubiquitous that you couldn't avoid certain people. But the profile in my home was my mother was a choir director, first and foremost by inclination. So we tended to listen to like a lot of choir music. There was like a lot of James Cleveland. There was a lot of like Albertina Walker, Inez Andrews, that whole caravan family tree, which
Yeah.
should be a documentary in and of itself, the minutia of the genius of Black culture, if you just did the caravans and and Inez and Shirley Caesar and all those people. Because Shirley was also one of the two women who had the most influence on me as a singer.
Oh God. If I hear no charge one more time, it won't be a moment too soon. Like every every day that song's on in the household.
But she was in the James Cleveland and all of this stuff. And obviously Aretha's Genius album, um, Amazing Grace.
Hmm.
I kind of got bored with choir music. It was beautiful. I learned my lessons. I was absorbing everything, of course. But my jam was like the quartet singers, them like them dudes in the deep from the deep south, and they just come into church and kill it, just kill it. And it would always be some dude with some like voice that could cut glass. Then there was another dude that you suspect
Yes.
probably was on the gay spectrum. You know what I'm saying? But brother was holding it down. You know what I'm saying? And he had that
Right.
high, beautiful voice, and the women would just like fall out and stuff. And it was like, but see, the church conglomeration or situation, congregation we were with, the Pentecostals, that was more the Baptists and the
Hmm.
Methodists who would have like the quartet singing. The Pentecostals was more about choirs and all of this kind of stuff, and nobody stealing the light from the pastor. You dig? So they,
Oh, wow. I did not know that. Okay.
there's some of that, you know what I mean? But which is why, ironically, it was Rod Stewart, one of my great heroes. Shout out or respect to Rod. It was Rod who turned me back on to Sam Cooke because I knew Sam Cooke vaguely as a legend in our community from the Soul Stirrers, but I didn't pay that much attention to it because that music wasn't mainly played in our home. But one of the things I've always loved about Rod and the Stones is neither one of them ever wasted any breath, not reminding you of who these heroes were that changed their lives and were not shy about letting you know who they were. So Rod's guy was Sam, Otis, Muddy, and,
Mhm.
and I've always heard some Bobby Blue Bland. But the point is, he was real about that shit. So it was when I fell in love with Rod and realized Rod was in the direction that I was going to be taking my own situation. Um, it was, him, and I just started listening to Sam and going, oh shit, yes, 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 yes. I missed this. This is what, but it was good that I got it when I got it because then I was not only able to listen to the pop stuff
Okay.
and appreciate what an underrated, one of the all-time underrated great foundational pop songwriters he was. Because if we forget how foundational he was to the writing what we call pop songs, not just soul or R&B, whatever. Sam Cooke and Buddy Holly were right there formulating what became pop music. And interestingly enough, as you know, they were friends. They were very close friends. Um,
Really?
but yeah, so it was Rod who took me back to Sam, and that's when like the door opened up again. I thought, yeah, and I always felt in my heart, if Sam had lived, he would have been doing what Rod wound up doing.
All right. So for me, like I'll say like Never a Dull Moment and Atlantic Crossing are like my two favorite Rod albums. But for you, like what are your go-to albums of his?
First of all, let me give him his flowers. The man has an unerring ear for songs. He's a great producer, whoever's producing him, or he's just got an unimpeachable ear for songs and great musicianship. Um, for me, he's never made an album where I just thought, well, okay, that's a waste of time. And he's made tons of them.
Mhm.
But I would have to say around that period, Footloose and Fancy Free, um, Tonight I'm Yours.
Oh, tonight I'm yours. Do anything that you want me
But
to.
check this out. The story was I was in the military. I was stationed in Hanau, Germany. The
Uh-huh.
base no longer exists. Third Armored Division. In the barracks, across from our barracks was a big rec center, and at the very top was some broom closets.
Hmm.
And I went out and bought the cassette of Tonight I'm Yours because up to that point I had like this nice sweet choir boy tenor. Okay, and my determination was I wasn't going to come out of this closet, no pun intended, um,
Well, until you sing like Rod or something,
until
or
I sang like Rod.
wait, what?
Until I had that voice he had, because I had the sweet, nice Michael Jackson-y, Stevie type of vibe, cultivating along the way. Frank Sinatra was another huge influence. I had
Right.
all that, but I wanted that other thing.
So the rasp comes from because you do have like three distinctive voices. Your rasp voice, and then a very sweet falsetto, and then your natural tenor. So you're saying that Rod Stewart is the impetus of that?
Yes,
What?
yes, all that. Maggie May, Wake Up Maggie. The first cut is the deepest.
Nigga,
Um,
what? For real?
all of
That's
that stuff,
crazy.
all of that stuff. Um, I can Baby Jane, okay, one of my favorite songs of all.
Baby Jane,
You
I did you right.
know,
Yes, you're right.
and Do
Okay.
You Think I'm Sexy is just, come on, man. Do You Think I'm Sexy is one of the records of life. It's just, he nailed it.
Has he ever told you the Young Turk story?
No, I don't think I got it directly from him.
Oh, yeah, no, I just recently he did a benefit and I had to play with him and I I'm always obsessed and you do this a lot too. I'm always obsessed with song titles that have nothing to do with what's said in the song.
Yeah,
And in my mind I'm like, you're saying Young Hearts, right? You're not saying Young Turks and he it was similar. I think Michael Jackson had the same situation with Heartbreak Hotel, basically like the publisher and the manager's like, look, there's already a song called Young Hearts out there, and people are going to confuse the two, and it's going to make the paperwork difficult.
and there's
So,
also the famous story of Radio Gaga from Queen, that he was never singing Gaga, but the record company didn't feel comfortable him actually putting Radio Kaka because he was saying all he hears on the radio is shit in these days. And
oh,
if you listen now, okay, that
yo,
then when you don't think you're supposed to be hearing Gaga, and you will hear Kaka, all we hear is Radio Kaka.
makes sense now.
Boom.
All right, look at
This
you
is
out
why
here
we.
schooling
This
me.
is
All
why
right,
we have to converse more often, my brother.
our journey through life is so parallel from living in America to moving to Town to all these things. Like you, even as you tell the story of your family and all that, like
Yes.
I've not shared that on the air, but same story. By I think 10, 12, 13, you kind of know what your calling is. What what is it that you desired to be before you were 18 years old? Like what did you think your calling was?
Um. Well, at various times, I wanted to be a marine biologist for a short period of time, but I was
Mhm.
serious about it. Uh, I wanted to be a journalist for a very long time and went to university for 1 year with the intent
That
of
explains it.
getting accredited. Yeah, okay, well, there you go.
Because your lyrics are just absolutely. Of course, you went to school for journalism. I wanted to be okay. Now I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was going to be my jam. I was quite certain in my heart that if I didn't make it as the heavyweight champion of the world, okay, then when I realized that my body type did not lend itself towards me becoming a heavyweight before the age of 40, uh, then I downsized to the middleweight champion of the world. And then I had my epiphany when I won the Golden Gloves for the state of Florida in 1980 during my 18th year when I was beating this kid, and his mother was was very emotionally supporting him and cheering him on. And I had a epiphanic moment that whatever I went into boxing to accomplish or to ascertain from the experience, I had gotten it. I had proven something vital to myself. That I wasn't a little pussy. Okay, I was tough. I was just littler than everybody else for a long time. And, I needed to do something to assert myself in that particular way. But there was one point when I was hitting this kid in the face pretty easily, and to hear his mother's impassioned, you know, pleas to him to do better, I realized in that moment that the spirit didn't put me on the earth to be hitting mother's children in the face. You know,
So you were going to be a boxer. You're a Golden Gloves winner.
yes, in 1980s for the state of Florida. I'll never forget that. It was in Coconut Grove, in an arena in Coconut Grove in Miami. And but I just remember that I actually didn't even fight after that fight because the next fight was the fight for the title. But the guy that I was due to fight had to pull out at the last minute because of some bullshit I still don't understand. But anyway, that's how I got the title. But that was also one of those epiphanic experiences where I realized it was time to to leave that part of warrior training alone and come back to the main arena.
So in some alternate life, like you could have been fighting like Ray Boom Boom Mancini or like
See, I was really good. I was shockingly good for someone who basically pretty much wasn't supported in any other type of athletic endeavor. I mean, I was always, I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. I was a great little baseball player, but I didn't have any ass. I couldn't get the ball much further than he was in. And so, these coaches don't have any patience. We just need to fatten them up. I'm just this kid with got all the potential in the world, but you couldn't strike me out. I knew it instantly where the ball was going the minute it left the bat. I wasn't the fastest kid by a long shot on the team, but I knew how to steal base. I was all instinct and everything. It was just pure instinct. Like
wow.
basketball, I didn't have any height and I couldn't shoot worth a shit, but I was a great defender, great rebounder, great passer. And the more difficult the shot, the more likely I was to make it. The easier the percentage of shot, the higher percentage shot it was, the lower percentage it was going to get from me. You know what I mean? But the point is that I kept trying to find my athletic milieu, and I could never find it until by accident I discovered that I had a natural instinct for boxing during the 1976 Olympics. That great Olympics when you had Ray Davis, Sugar Ray Leonard, um, I forget there was like 3 or 4 guys on that squad who all want to become great champions. But yeah, I was a cousin of mine that come down from Jersey to visit us in Florida, and we went into the laundry room after one of the boxing matches, and we started piling a bunch of athletic socks on our fists, and we started punching each other. And I noticed I was like really good at it. And next thing you know, I had gotten the respect that I needed, and I had proven to myself what I needed until I got, like I said, I got the sign that this part of your training is over.
All right. So now that I know that you are a real sports head, now I really have to analyze the Kobe and LeBron song. You know, just to see your song titles alone is one thing, but to experience it, I was like, wow, this is a really risky way to go. But in my mind, I always said that serious musicians aren't sports heads, but time and time again, I'm proven wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
It's that other great diversion.
all right, so now I have to get serious about my sports passion. So,
No, it's just that it's the triangulation of singers want to be athletes, athletes want to be rock stars want to be movie stars. It's that
yeah,
thing. It's like we all
the
want to be
grass is already
one thing.
greener.
But I had a conversation with someone actually quite recently about the fact that still the average guy, if you gave him a choice, would be Elon Musk, okay, and Bruce Springsteen, okay, or Elon Musk and Michael Jordan. Fuck Elon Musk. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
That's just billions and billions, never have to work a day in your life. But if dude can be like Tiger Woods or Wayne Gretzky, or like, for just like that summer,
A hero. Yes.
when those people, you can be Ronaldo when all of those people in your nation are cheering for you. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like being, like Bruce, and you can play for fucking almost 4 hours, and
Mhm.
people are still rapturously drenched and ready to receive more from the utterances that fall, from the grace of your table. I mean, that's incredible to be able to have that kind of position and understand why society or polite society have always been so wary of those of us who practice this magic that they cannot contain, because it is a very, very, very powerful force, and it can just take your mind somewhere else away it can challenge the programming. And we know that all societies that are going to benefit as how it sees itself as a society, there's going to be some programming involved that we collectively agree to undergo in order to be this kind of relatively cohesive thing called a society where we're pretty much all on the same page.
I didn't ask earlier. Where are you currently residing? Where do you live?
For the last 21 years, 22 perhaps, I've been living in Milano.
Oh, Italy.
Yes,
Okay. Man, I've
yes,
been there a few times. Never knew that. Okay. Well, so
yes.
do you still follow? Are you still passionate about sports now? Do you follow it? Uh,
Well, it's a great distraction for us because, we're consumed with this thing of ours, La Cosa Nostra.
yeah.
This thing is our life. It's like, I say to people all the time, it's not like, what would you do if you weren't doing this? That's not even a question that, this is what life is about for me. It's consuming. It's, it's sometimes just so much as it can torment you as a beast. So the other things, films, sports, books, those are the great distractions that are right there at your fingertips
Hmm.
that, excuse me, you can immerse yourself in because also we're storytellers. So you need to fall back into these other disciplines to not only get yourself rested, to give your mind a place to tune off somewhere else, you know, um, less challenging, but also just to keep up with the stories and the things that, are a part of our whole milieu of presentation as artists. You got to just keep your hand involved in the arts and be immersed in it if you want to remain an active participant and relevant to its emotional to where it is emotionally.
Hmm.
So, for me, it's interesting because a person that I identify a lot with is Basquiat. He's one of my three favorite. Basquiat, Dali, and Picasso are like gods to me.
Hmm.
And in fact, I had a project that I was going to call Basquiat. And in fact, it was interesting because this is something I was going to plan to talk to you about as well. But it got postponed because the Basquiat estate wrongly assumed that I was trying to, edge something onto my plate from them. It was,
Hmm.
of course, and his people at that particular time were not very hip and young. They were more like guardians and gatekeepers. So
Got
God
it.
bless them. They didn't get it. But the conceit of the project is that Basquiat, his secret desire, his unfulfilled desire was to be in a punk rock band,
Hmm.
and that he was in a band, and that years later,
Oh,
a
great.
box of cassettes was discovered.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, with this in mind, what did those tapes sound like? And that was the conceit of this Basquiat project is to me to undertake to provide the music for the secret music he was making that he didn't live long enough to find the courage to release or whatever, or to press himself forward in that direction. But maybe even so, more so than being an artist, what he really wanted to be was a fucking rock star.
Have you ever met Michael Holloman at all?
Not that I'm aware of, Michael Holloman. Who's
Yeah, I did one, I do a lot of side projects and uh one of my also wishes was to hear what that music sounded like. So um I did this at the Brooklyn Academy Museum, I think in 2012, but I had his partner in that group, Michael Holloman, whom I guess our listeners would probably know. If you ever Google any New York City breakers footage, them on Soul Train or whoever their spokesperson is. Oh, also in Beat Street. It's the 40th anniversary of Beat Street. Michael
wow.
Holloman was kind of the official spokesperson for the New York City Breakers, but not many people know that he was the second half. They were the black uh kind of punk art. It's reductive to say Wham, but I'm just trying to figure out a duo or whatever. But
Yeah.
Michael was his other half, his partner in that band called Gray. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions about you uh, was through the gaze and the lens of rock journalists born in the 40s. Uh, really, and the thing is, or let me give you a preface. So tomorrow, after 2 years of working on this, I've been my follow-up film to Summer of Soul is the Sly and the Family Stone documentary.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're not ready for this shit. You're not ready. And also, I'm kicking myself because you would have been the perfect, uh,
Interview subject.
oh, beyond. However, this is what I'm learning. Um, especially of a certain generation of like critics that
Yes.
you had to face.
Yeah.
The Dave Marsh generation,
Yeah.
the Rolling Stone born in 1940s.
Yeah. Yeah. I get you. I get you. To
You
this day, I can't read Rolling. To this day, I can't go near Rolling Stone.
brother, I get it. I get it now.
I
And the
mean,
thing
just in case there's something besides some more lists that these motherfuckers put together. But anyway,
I get it. I get it.
but
So,
I
but
yeah, yeah, but see if I can interpolate what you extrapolate, sorry.
yes.
Uh, I understand what you're saying. And for example, even the cultural divide between the shtick I was running in England and not having time to recalibrate the fact that the same potion won't work on the Americans because they're just not as academically grounded for as long a period of time as the English. And it's their language we speak anyway. Plus, they have something we don't, which is the appreciation of irony. In any event, some of them were aware that I was just dusting off a Muhammad Ali routine, just trying to hype and sell the
All right.
record. Because at the end of the day, I didn't believe any of that shit. I was just, but I
So you're
did
saying
watch.
that the interviews that you would give like NME could go down easier there, but here with Rolling Stone, then
Yes,
suddenly you're the most
yes.
arrogant.
Absolutely. And then I've always tried to be a gentleman and be real about my shit. And then there was this one, the first journalist I spoke to when I came to America, she was upset that I didn't try to fuck her. So, she wound up doing a smear piece just based on, again, an interpretation of an act. I'm sure you met him, but Muhammad was nothing like his image. He was trying to sell
I
tickets.
know.
He knew whether you came to see him win or lose, you came.
I knew
So,
you were doing the Muhammad Ali thing. I
you
knew it.
know,
And I was 16 at the time reading that cover story.
but the
So,
enemy thing was interesting, Questy, because I remember it was a young journalist and it was for the cover. I was really excited. And then, of course, I was too naive to catch this trick. He turns off the tape recorder, says, okay, we're finished. Then he looks at me and he says, but seriously, how good do you think you are? You really are. And, I'm like 23, some 24. I'm not even sure what kind of question is this? I come from the hood.
mhm.
It's like, and one thing we learn is that you used to go to like Bethune-Cookman talent shows, Bethune-Cookman College, and you learn quickly if you don't entertain these motherfuckers, you become the entertainment. You know, either way, they're gonna get the entertainment either through you or from you, or But so you kind of. Plus, I was born in New York, and there is a certain swagger. There is a certain swagger that imbues upon
Exactly.
those of us who were born there and grew up there. And I think all those things together. But basically, I didn't believe all that shit. But at the end of the interview, the guy asks, "So how good do you think you are?" And I'm not sure if he's serious, but I just look at him and says, "I think I'm a fucking
Fucking
genius."
genius.
You know what I mean? And but I also didn't believe that at the time, but I also did believe that I could get there much easier if I did believe it. It was one of those things where from the earliest moment I heard the word, it resonated something of recognition inside me, like, well, I don't know what this means, but I think I might have some of this or what have you. But it snowballs from there. And as you know, then at some point you don't have to say anything. They start to give quotes to what is a profile and what they feel like people will accept this from him because we're already presenting him as this kind of guy who would say this kind of shit.
Mhm.
So yeah, that definitely was a situation. But there's also another element I found, which is when you're erudite and you can speak for yourself, they get into this savior complex thing where they want to be the ones to interpret how brilliant they
Who
think.
you are. Right. Exactly.
it's on them because they loved it. Well, they often prefer that image of the idiot savant who is brilliant, but he just doesn't know because he didn't have much of an education. And I think I experienced being too intimidating for some of them because I was reading the same shit they were reading. I was reading the same journalists, Nick Kent and all these cats that they were growing up on and revering, you know.
Here's the thing that I learned though. The thing that I learned, especially from your press at the time. Well, number one, today I do believe that we as people need to be more entitled, more confident,
Mm.
less humble. I'm so done with niceties and humbles. Yes, I've been programmed for 50 years of my life.
Yes.
So this will kind of be my demeanor. But I actually believe that that was the right path. And I believe that if you speak it, it is. So this is what I want to ask you, because I know like traditionally, yes, you've done where people just like stay on the hard line and all that stuff. For me, I feel like your true debut, I don't think anyone's first album, I think everyone's first album is getting to the mountaintop and finding themselves and is a burden. Like if you ask Nas, Illmatic's a burden, especially with critics. Like you got to live up to this thing that you did. So
Yeah.
there's certain burdens. However, I always wanted to know when you're turning in the tapes for Neither Fish Nor Flesh,
Hmm.
which I feel is your real first album,
Yeah, me too.
because your first album is just your life experience up until that point,
Yeah.
and you're feeling your way out. And yeah, of the two, I choose the latter. When you're turning that in, what is Donnie's response? What is Tommy's response? What is the brass's response?
Okay, first of all, let me say this some interesting things that goes down with this. Um, First of all, it's uncanny because in fact I mentioned that quite a few times for this particular project as I was promoting it, that and it's the truth, the first album felt like the finale of a life that that I was meant to finish.
Your old life. Yes.
Yeah, that I let me just see if I can explain this and see if you can keep track for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I said, I do believe in doesn't matter what we call them. I do believe in spirits of angels and other things. I do believe we are in this multi-dimensional interactive experience, overlapping dimensions and all kinds of stuff. And of course,
Yes.
just
It's
the way
it's
that
it's
just
real.
the way
It's
that our
real.
radio is got all of this capacity, but we're only focused on where it is on the dial right now, and that's our frequency of focus. So we are not aware that there's all these other frequencies going on as well. So for me, that's important because when I was 18 years old, I had an experience where I was home from basic training from the military.
Mm-hmm.
And my old room obviously had been moved into and taken over by a younger sibling. So I slept in the den, the TV room,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a dream that night. I'll never forget. It was December 8th. I was home for 2 weeks from basic training before getting reassigned to my first posting in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this dream that, like I said, my very first movie I can remember seeing was Breakfast at Tiffany's. And in the dream, I'm the age I was, 18. I'm standing in front of Tiffany's department store in New York. And in the haze, it's really early morning. And I see this figure, familiar figure walking towards me. And as he gets closer to me, I recognize more and more. And his smile gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And at one point I go, oh shit, that's John Lennon. And I'll never forget, he was wearing a white shirt, some blue jeans, and his hat, and his granny glasses. And as he get close to me, he looked like he was so happy to see me. He stuck out his hand and as I stuck out my hand, he went straight through me. Okay. These were my first heroes,
Mm-hmm.
profound influence. So I get up that morning and my mother says to me, when she sees me that morning, did you hear what happened? I said, what? She says, John Lennon was killed last night.
Oh,
I I said, what? She said, yeah, he was shot in New York. And I said, Mom, I dreamt that he walked into me. So again, here's my take on these things. If if I agree to take some of your what you're leaving behind, I'm sure there were quite a few people on this list. Yeah, I'm going to leave you a little bit of this Beatle magic. I'm going to leave you a little bit, but you can't take that without taking the burden as well. So he had issues with his mom. He had issues, a lot of issues.
hmm,
You have to take some of that shit on as well, because that was also what made him him.
right.
So I say that because, first of all, I believe that there are these overlapping experiences where that first album felt like me and John were finishing something. Okay, his car, something maybe he whatever, or I like your filter. I would like to work through you. Perfect. I'm your pen. Let's do it. Um, and it felt like I had stepped out of something that I was just always destined to step out of and into and out of. But I agree with you that neither fish nor flesh for me, and it was the most exciting time I've ever had making a record because I could just feel, in retrospect, the roots of post-millennium rock began there. And finally, I was able to, Mozart. The last thing he said was he'd gotten a commission to be a church Kapellmeister, and all they commissioned from him was like two or three pieces a year. So he would have had all of his chance, all this time to compose. And he said something to the effect, damn, I was just getting ready to compose the music I really wanted to make. And you think like, fuck, if Mozart feels that way, or Haydn's last words being, I was finally learning how to write for horns. You mean? I mean,
That was his last words.
apparently, you know, apparently. So, for
I'm
me, it
not
was,
done yet. I just wow, it's
yeah.
crazy.
So I do agree with you that it felt like the breakthrough that was. Now, here's another situation was that before I went into the studio to make that record, the president of Columbia, CBS England, Paul Russell, pulled me into his office and wanted to show me all these demographic surveys that basically said that though I hadn't sold as many records as Michael or anyone else, that I had ticked literally every demographic box that they even keep track of, and that they had never seen that before, and it freaked them out. So that let me know one thing right there. I was seen as a political figure because, as you know, I don't have to be singing about politics if my music is bringing people together across the divides that are placed there artificially to keep people from. So if I'm bringing in bikers and grandmothers and 13-year-olds and academics and all these people that they keep, people start in power start to look at that and go, okay. Plus, they didn't have enough time to vet me. I just shot off like a rocket. So
You didn't think that was just due to let's maximize. If anything, like I could have sworn that they were like, okay, this is someone that will, I don't want to say the word replace, but you know how record execs feel
yes,
like
of course, of
this is the
course.
person that
But that's all
will replace
connected.
Michael as
That's
the
all
new.
connected. That's all connected. So that's why this is very intriguing because, when we do the book, I'll have time to extrapolate, all of this information, look at it in depth because everything is connected. And I'm trying to keep, a hold of the thread
I got
myself.
it.
The point is that um, they knew who Michael was. So whatever he was guilty or not guilty of, they would have known. They knew who he was. He had been vetted his whole life. He had been vetted. They knew who he was. They knew what it take to motivate him. They knew what it take to manipulate him. They didn't have that info on me yet because I came up too quick.
I
And
get it.
the corporation's not going to get in front of the money while the money's printing itself. They'll wait for the money to reset before they go, okay, now do we want to continue? Who is this motherfucker? Who is this kid? Okay. And but Paul Russell brought me into his office and he said, I just want you to know that the first 2 million records you bought you sold were genuine music fans. He says, after this, you become a cultural phenomenon and people are not buying the record for the music. People are buying the record because it's part of their cultural identity of the moment. That you can't say you're cool if you don't have this on your coffee table if someone walks into your living room. Have you heard the song? So, oh yeah, I've been there, done that. It becomes that kind of thing. He actually said to me, don't expect your next record or next couple records to follow the same formula. It won't. He said, because those people will come back to you. But the history of England, especially, they won't come back to you to your third or fourth project. Okay, because you're gonna have to pay for this success. Now, I
Hey,
do
was he
not.
telling you that you were too successful?
He was basically saying I wasn't going to have that type of success again anytime soon, because at one point it went beyond being a musical thing and becoming a cultural phenomenon that then developed steam as that goes beyond the music. So those people, the next time, you don't get those people to come right back. You get the fans.
Let me ask you an important question then. And this is kind of the theme of the slide film. And I'll ask you this.
Mhm.
Is success as traumatic or more traumatic than failing is?
Look, the bottom line is this: we all have to be responsible for the energy that we create. There are no exceptions. Society may give us a free pass based on its affection for us or our image, but karma is real, and the law is simple. We all have to be responsible for the energy we create, those who are capable of creating energy. That's just the way the universe polices itself. So the bottom line is I was going to have to pay for that sojourn, regardless of whether I had wound up on this side or that side, because there is no free lunch. Everything has a price, and you either pay in advance or you pay on the back end. I didn't have to pay in advance, well, at least as far as the industry was concerned. So I had to pay on the back end. But there was also genuine fear because I was genuine. I really believed that I was given the power of transformation and I could help, as George Harrison said, people say, think for yourself. We understand that the state, Mount Olympus, creates us demigods in order to program the people as to what is expected of them or how they're expected to be in order to be members of a society, a governed society, a civilization, a community. So obviously, it is not in the best interest of any kind of organization with power to promote the power of someone who is not in turn promoting them
A
and their
team
power.
player. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, I can't be that naive. Like they came up against me. I wasn't trying to bring down the building. I was just saying, look, I'm who I am, and I'm not changing for some bullshit. I'm not going to become a black artist for you bitches. I won't. You can argue for days how black a person I am. I have no beef with none of that, whatever. But I will never consent to being a black artist because you know and I know what that means. And you know that unless you were Stevie Wonder and you had all of Motown telling you do what the hell you wanted, you know exactly how limiting and handcuffing that was. So I was never interested in being a black artist. I was never interested in helping the establishment restabilize the image they were comfortable black people emulating, black guys emulating. Okay, you don't want black dudes as the maverick. And plus, we only pay lip service to the maverick because it's a useful promotional image. We don't really support mavericks, but we'll support the image of one as long as we can control or we can collaborate on what it is you're doing. But that's not a question for everyone, question. Not everybody gives a shit. Not everybody has any ambition other than to be famous, make great music, and whatever. And I don't hold them responsible for anything that I feel responsible for. But for me, I understood that I was not going to be yet the next cog in a machine, that determines how people are to behave, to respond, what parts of themselves are acceptable, what parts are unacceptable, and what the establishment is comfortable embracing you as. I felt like I had many ancestors saying, you don't have to do that. We did that. We were not happy. This is why we're pushing you, you stubborn asshole. This is why we've made you so stubborn, because it's imperative that now, as you have a chance to turn this wheel, you must turn this wheel because what we do is of consequence. You don't know the people born. The people might not even be born who you're setting up their life for, but you must do this because I was enamored of the belief that if I didn't do it, the music that I've been able to contribute wouldn't possibly be made by anyone else in particular, but as that which came through my particular filter. And I'm grateful that you mentioned even D'Angelo, who I have to say that I'm extremely proud of. A few years ago, I was in Sweden, and
Hmm.
the Swedish journalist reminded me that I said to him 25, 30 fucking years ago what I was going to do. And he said, "My God, you've done it. You've done it." And he mentioned another artist. He said another artist, he mentioned D'Angelo. He said D'Angelo has also continued to resist caricaturing himself and just continuing to grow and expanding that thing. Because again, it's like I don't care how many credentials you have or what kind of journalist you call yourself. You don't tell the music what it is. The music tells you. You don't say, "Oh, this isn't jazz." Fuck you. Jazz
Right.
isn't dead. Nothing's dead. We're still, jazz is still writing chapters and verses. Rock is still saying, "No, no, on this." Hip hop, as you're clear, is still ever expanding. You don't say, "No, that's not hip hop. That's not country to me." Well, it's not country to you. But country tells me what country is,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and I understood that it was imperative that one of us had to get out and ahead of that thing this time and not feel the burden that Prince and Michael felt and others felt to maintain that other pillar that they represented. And this is why I've also said to people as well, as much of a pain in the ass it was to come behind Michael and Prince, what a stroke of tremendous fortune to be as creatively inspired and curious as I have been blessed to be, and to be behind two bona fide fucking geniuses. These cats were for real. These guys were giants, and you were either going to shrink, like coming after the Beatles, or you saw it as your license to just. To, there's no excuse not to just keep pushing this thing when you've come behind two groundbreaking lifetime achievement type dudes like Prince and Michael. So um, was that kind of clear to your question if I didn't veer
I,
off too much? But
I
Michael was
get.
involved in this because also by the time he inherited the Beatles catalog, another great irony is that the very music that woke me up in this life, the Beatles, when Michael got a hold of it,
Hmm.
that was the very music that kind of killed the battery charge on that life as well. Like, okay, boom, because from the
Too much
moment,
power.
well, he had too much. Well, who am I to say too much power? He had power, and then of course the game began when he got the catalog because Sony knew they wanted to go in business with him. So basically, whatever you want, Michael, fuck, you want this guy? Is this guy a pain in your ass? No problem. Because before he bought the Beatles catalog, the question they had to ask him was, okay, but Michael, can you replace his sales and yours? I don't know. But when he had that catalog and Sony's half, even in the 90s, was already over half a billion
Yeah.
a year, and forgetting that it wasn't just not forgetting it wasn't just the Beatles catalog. The Beatles songs were the jewel of that catalog. He also had all of Sly's stuff, had all the Little Richard stuff. He had 100 country music #1 hits. That was a copiously fat, thick docket. I
Yeah.
mean, a packet, if you will. So from that point onwards, it was like, yeah, they gave him, he wasn't very comfortable with me.
Trust me, like Jimmy Jam gave me 7 hours. It was only supposed to be 1 hour, and Jimmy Jam gave me seven. So I will pull out every story, but I will be succinct and wrap this up because I'm
I
also
had
at
a
the
chance to work with Jelly Bean on this project. I did a song with Jelly Bean.
really.
Yeah. His
Ah, yeah.
I can't remember what is his name. Walk On. Walk On is his name. He approached me last year and said he wanted me to participate with him if I would. I told him, look, just on principle alone, you guys were such a huge part of, my situation and the time and,
Hmm.
and various projects you guys worked on. So I said, sure. So basically we wound up collaborating on this piece, and it was really cool because it was also the very last session of Ronnie Drayton. Because
Ronnie Drayton's on this.
I was gonna play the guitar solo.
Ah,
And then
see, I don't have
um,
liner notes, so damn, that's crazy.
yeah, we'll get you whatever you need. there's a gentleman named Oscar Derek Brown. He was a very, very good friend of Ronnie's. And so
Hmm.
basically when he told Ronnie that I was uh what I was doing, Ronnie said, "Oh, I want to play the solo. I want to." And when I heard, I was like, "Please, please, I will be honored." So it was apparently the last thing he kind of did professionally that we were aware of, and I feel blessed to have participate with him because he's definitely one of the unsung heroes of the time I was coming through with his work with like Vernon and the Black Rock Coalition and all of that.
Yes, the legendary Ronnie Drayton. By the way, yeah, I didn't even get to this new album, but literally like fucking nice things, Camden Town, selfish.
Yeah,
Like those are my that's my shit, man.
thank
I
you, man.
I love it to death. I'm gonna wrap it up. I do have a slight question.
Let me let me
If
let me let me finish along this point, if it's
yes, well
okay,
that's the thing I want you to continue.
because because admonishment about being careful of meeting your heroes. Um, Bruce Springsteen has been like a big brother to me. Prince is still I'm still close to him. And Miles played a pivotal role in my situation. Michael wasn't just one of those situations. It was just one of those things where, you know, but
He
I
was
want to make it
competitive. I
I
get
want
it.
to make this clear. Not only was he competitive, but in a perfect world, he would have seen me as like a gold, like, okay, I'm gonna show this motherfucker, right? And we'd have done that Beatles Stones Who thing where we just kept trying to top each other,
I would have been here for it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I would have
but
been here for it.
by that time he was maybe just tired, like, look, whatever. Okay. But the point I'm trying to make is this. He didn't owe me a damn thing. His life had provided for my life exactly what it was meant to provide. And there's also a very, very good chance that by getting in my way, he might have spared me his fate.
You literally just answered the question that I was going to ask
Yes. He might have saved my life in getting in front of me, and it might have
inadvertently.
also given me more longevity. Because I was even asked earlier in an interview, your voice, you still sound the same as 4 years ago, and how compared to whatever. And I said, but the truth is, they didn't burn me out. They didn't have a chance to burn me out. And I said, so many of my colleagues were just burned out, and it was just doing what they could to keep up with it. And when Whitney lost her voice at the end, I was so moved because I realized, singers don't mature until their 40s anyway. They look after
Hmm.
themselves even moderately well. But I
Hmm.
realized she hadn't lost her voice. With the sound of what you were hearing was a woman who had lost her heart because she was all heart. And the voice is just a conduit. It's just an amp. It's not the guitar. The guitar is the guitar. The voice is the amp. If your guitar is fucked, the strings are broken, your heart is broken, and you don't really want to be doing that anymore, obviously it's going to show in what comes through you, what comes out of you. And I felt that was the thing, was she wasn't just trying to destroy her voice. She was trying to destroy that life that held her in bondage and just became too much. And from our Native American heritage, we don't believe in death anyway, the way it's taught in the West. And so, she wasn't obliged to be with us raggedy motherfuckers 1 minute past realizing she had done what she had come to do. She had blessed the souls and the lives. I just saw her movie. I had on a carousel for 2 years, Questy. And I just because I had her and Aretha's life stories on the to watch list because I knew those lives reverberated so close to my own that I have to be ready and prepared psychologically to digest those stories because those stories are my stories as well. So, I had forgotten how many like just groundbreaking records Whitney had, broken and
Hmm.
just like wow. But you know, it's the same with Prince. You do what you come to do, and sometimes spirit says, I will not let you be abused 1 second longer. Because a life is easy to replace. A soul is a little harder. So you know what I'm saying to you? So I feel like those were taken from us to preserve what they were and for further service because the angels recycle.
Hmm.
It's like only 12 of these motherfuckers, and they play all the roles that are necessary to play, as many roles as needed, like a traveling Shakespearean troupe, where this time you're the dad, next time I'm the papa. Okay, but we all travel together because we all know each other and we all trust each other to play these roles for us. So I have no doubt that me and Michael were very, very, very close, and that's perhaps why he fucked my shit up, because it was in so doing he spared my life, and I'm able now to have this conversation in 2024 with you, another person whose life has been greatly touched by the magic those geniuses, laid down. I also am happy to hear that I had some influence, because when you guys first came through, it was same with Erica. You're not always sure if it's your vanity or your pride, but sometimes you can feel like when your spirit is a part of somebody else, it doesn't have to be anything specific. It's just a vibe. And you go like, yeah, I think these guys might have been listening to my records, you know what I mean? And so
You think?
it's always reassuring when you find out that yes, there is a family, and we, like I said before, we do travel together and we perform the works and the miracles that we're here to perform, and we pack up the caravan and we move on to the next performance.
I swear to God, man, if I'm the if allowed to at least refer to that other nom de plume of yours, which was E.G. O'Reilly, like I was your number one disciple, like literally for that. Okay,
Um,
my kind of my closing question is your rebirth with Angels and Vampires,
yes.
where you're on your own and you're out of the system. Can you just walk me through kind of your caterpillar to butterfly transition
Well,
to where you are now? Because the thing was is that I just thought after Vibrator or Wildcard was the last Sony record. I forget which one,
the
but
vibrator,
Vibrator. Okay, so Wildcard was your first project on your own,
yes.
correct? Okay,
But it was actually created. It was created. This is an interesting story, if I can. It
yes,
was created for Capitol because I had 10 years I had spent trying to get out off of the Sony arrangement. The English had let me go. The Americans had been hanging on to it, but the English were very reluctant. It was a messy situation, but finally I got out of it. Um, then I was supposed to do um, Sam Cooke. That the family, I was extremely flattered by the family, said that I was the only person they wanted to play Sam. But I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I don't care how flattered I am that you think my voice can replace Sam. If the movie is about a legend, why would you not want to expose his voice? And I also knew that, and Sony had made the mistake of saying to my manager at the time, why is he coming all this in their minds, all this innovative shit? All he has to do is make Sam Cooke records and we'll promote him for life.
shut up and sing and make the hits, and yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I as much as I is idolize Sam Cooke, I don't want to be buried in his grave. And those things can be Pyrrhic victories where you have success, the record company pushes it, and now every gig you show up, if you don't do some Sam shit, they're yelling at you or throwing shoes,
right.
whatever. So it was a tough decision, but then I had been approached to play Sam in the Muhammad Ali film. So I had agreed because Michael Mann had really talked me into it, the director. I have a lot of time for him, Michael. And I was going to do it, and then I get a call from Michael Mann saying, "Do me a favor." This was a couple of days before I was supposed to start shooting. He said, "I need you to talk to Tommy Mottola because Tommy Mottola is trying to fuck with the soundtrack because I didn't know that they had the soundtrack." So basically, I had spent 10 years trying to get away from Tommy Mottola in that situation, only to find out the last minute that if I had sung on the soundtrack, it would have belonged to Sony. And Tommy was
Right.
trying to get me to sign another option that he wasn't going to release the soundtrack rights to the film until I did something for him. And so I basically said to Michael, man, I said, well, I thank you very much for this opportunity. I would rather go to hell, literally, with gas strapped to my back than to deal with this guy again. So I bowed out of the film. Um,
Do you believe when I think he said this in his book, but before I read his book, he was a guest on the Tonight Show, and just casual 3 minute conversation. I kind of always ask like, is there an artist that got away or like a regret or something like that? And he said that it wasn't close to like we could have done better by him,
Yeah,
but he kind of he said in a very non-industry,
yeah.
when someone has a prepared answer.
I'm moved that you say that because I get my guides, if you will. My spirit tells me all the time that there was a price that everyone had to pay who consciously went into it knowing that they were trying, because they got caught up in trying to teach me a lesson. It was like, plus the other young ones are watching, so we have to use them as an example of, don't cross us. We're the biggest record corporation in the world. You do, and CBS, Columbia were relative to that situation, a bit more left, liberal, and artist friendly. Sony came in with a real, if not necessarily politically right wing attitude, socially right wing. The artists do what the fuck we tell them. We don't
Mm-hmm.
listen to the artists. We're not we're not Mo Austin at Warner Brothers. This isn't like,
Right.
you know, we're not Virgin Records. The artist listens to Sony. We tell them. So it started off on the wrong foot. There was also the fact that, like we going back to Neither Fish Nor Flesh. If I could go back and do it over again, I would probably delay the release by 6 months because it fell in the cusp between the old regime leaving and being taken over by the new incoming Sony regime. So it was also one of those situations where the timing would, nothing about that situation was friendly. But as I said to you, Paul Russell, who had run the English company, had already told me to expect some different shit. But here's also another reality question that most people don't realize, artists don't realize, and your manager for sure is not going to tell you. So you
Mm-hmm.
go back in, you renegotiate your contract. Now you get what you should have gotten in the first place, as far as you're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't realize is that part of the reason your record was so enticing is because they got it for nothing. I was signed at the lowest legally binding contract
Minimum
among
wage.
good. I was literally 30,000 pounds was the lowest limit that I got signed at the time, might have been 50, 40 grand,
Yeah.
$40,000.
Uh-huh.
And so what I didn't realize is it was all gravy. We didn't spend a lot on the record because the record was pretty much me re-recording the demos. Um, and so it was just all found money. What they don't tell you is you come back now, you're making serious boom, boom. They got to share a lot more of that overhead. And now they realize to get that same money they got before, this is how much they're going to have to spend to get there. Meanwhile, what they're gambling on is that, like as you've alluded to before, there's a new group, a new act that's on their first deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is why in the NFL, they try to maximize that rookie quarterback contract to get the team, whatever they
Yeah.
need. And it's the same. So your manager's not going to say, no, I'm going to forfeit this big alimony check you're about to give me to pass it on to my situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to forfeit. You shouldn't do this. You should stay on the same thing, but you should instead just up your points. They don't tell you that. That basically can become a victim of your success where among the other machinations that were happening around it, the perfect storm that I walked into, you've basically made yourself less financially viable and exploitative simply because you're getting now a bigger piece of the pie.
For you, what is a good takeaway? Because I know there are pros and I know that there are cons to the situation.
Well, first of all, let me just say this about the Tommy regime. First of all, I was a Yetnikoff guy. I idolized Walter Yetnikoff because I grew up reading books that he
Mm-hmm.
factored into. I grew up reading Billboard magazine in the school library and
Right.
hearing the name Walter Yetnikoff. So I knew who he was. I knew his stories. I knew his history. I knew he had succeeded Clive Davis. He was a rock star to me. We
Mm-hmm.
hit it off like he was my Brooklyn Jewish uncle. He was that dude. He was moved that I spoke Yiddish, that I lived in Germany. We just had a vibe that me
Mm-hmm.
and Tommy just never had. Now, here's the irony. It did occur to me later that once again, it could have been because of Michael and getting Michael's attention that Walter decided to really push me. Because I had broken all over the world. And to be fair to Tommy Mottola, he wasn't that enthusiastic about me at any point in my career. He just thought I was just hype. So, you know,
Really?
well, he wasn't a big, he was never there. He always thought Walter was overindulging me. And and blah blah
Oh,
blah.
that was Walter's guy, not my guy. So okay, I
Yeah,
get it now.
yeah, and plus, when he took over, see, the thing is, between again my first and second records, Walter was in rehab. So Walter was in Minnesota, drying out at John Hopkins. The Japanese get a call from Tommy Mottola saying, "Hey,
Hmm.
your boy is coked out of his mind. He's in rehab. Who's buying the store? Me, Tommy Mottola. I'm buying the store." Basically, Mottola was Yetnikov's find. He was his lieutenant. He was the one who put him in that situation. So when Mottola turned around and did what he did to basically bust Yetnikov, they got the Japanese to replace him. From that point anyway, I'm a loyal dude. I mean, that was my guy, man.
Right.
And now you want me to switch my loyalty to you, and you wear like short black socks with your like hair sticking out between your pants leg and your socks and shit. Look, some southern black dude from the 50s. Fuck this. And I remember him giving me a little letter that Michael had written to me to gave to him to give to me. And I could already see the writing on the wall. Okay. Because Tommy would have still had to have support from some of the artists to get the Japanese to part ways with Yetnikov, because that was Yetnikov's strongest suit, his relationships with the artists. So basically, once he had secured, I guess, a certain group of artist support, he didn't. I was expendable. I was expendable to cause, as they would say. But so in all fairness to him, we never really hit it off. But at the same time, when I saw what he did to Walter, I just thought, nah, this guy gives me as they used to say in German, gives me the Egel. Just no, I didn't feel comfortable with him. And of course, he fell out with Michael later as well, all that. But my take on it was this: that regime that featured Donnie Ienner, Michelle Anthony, those three, they were the three big honchos.
Hmm.
Um, I was struck by how they had bigger egos than the artists, that they wanted to be the rock stars. And in fact, that was the generation, with all due respect to him, because he's worked his ass off and I know he's a great musician, but Randy Jackson belonged to that whole regime as well. And then Randy wound up being bigger as a celebrity than the other
Right.
ones. So the point is, but that was the ethos that I was dealing with, that I never had a meeting with Donnie Ienner where this motherfucker wasn't talking more about himself and what he had done than why we were there to have the meeting in the first place. And it was just kind of clear. And Michelle used to take me for limo rides when I would come to New York from
Hmm.
London, and just impress upon me how important a jewel I was in the crown, the Sony crown, right? So at one point I get annoyed with her saying this. And I say, well, Michelle, which one of them diamonds am I? Am I one of them like pave diamonds on the back, that gets caught underneath the neck? Like you can't see them because the neck hairs, the nappy hairs get all like, you mean I'm that part of the crown? Or am I one of these jewels at the middle where no matter what your hair looks like, you can see that's this motherfucker right here. And at some point she got embarrassed and stopped dropping that line on me because I didn't want to hear that.
Right.
They didn't know what to do with me in the manner in which Walter did. But what they did that different than Walter was Walter said, look, I trust this guy's vision. He just proved something out of nowhere, out of left field. I had Doug Morris, who used to run Atlantic,
Right.
who up until that point, when he was trying to talk me into coming with his company, he said, I had been in the business for 40 years. I've never seen anybody, even Elvis. Nobody came through the way you did. I said, yeah, well, I pay for that because it freaked people out. And so I had to answer for all of that. And then, like I said, when they find out that you're not interested in just representing a bunch of bullshit, they're not going to be comfortable sharing their power with you because they can see who you are. And nobody's trying to upset the status quo. That's not their job. So it's not like I don't understand. It's not like I can't come to terms with the fact that I was an inconvenient man for the time and the place. But I did what Spirit asked me to do. I laid the seeds in the ground, and I'm still reaping the whirlwind and the benefits of them close to 40 years later. And it's what allows me to talk to you and have this conversation without having had to sell more than I was capable of remanifesting, if you will.
Are you still, what's your relationship with the material though? Like,
Well,
because there's
and
two sides of you. And, you know, is it burdensome if a fan is yelling out like
No, no,
"Do
because
rain" or seven more? You know,
at this point, about 5 or 6, 7 years ago, I opened the whole thing back up. It was imperative upon me to lock out that part and focus on growing the garden of post-millennium rock. The other garden didn't need my help. They already had a major corporation who co-sponsors those first four records with me. They were taking care of that. I didn't have to do that work. I just had to work the fields that I was preparing for where I am now. So for a long time, I made every sacrifice necessary to not burden people with that reality that you're coming to see me under a false impression. I made it clear, even the venues that I chose to play were deliberately intended that I didn't have to feel the extra burden or pressure to sell out a place of 10,000 people or whatever. If, I can only realistically get, 500 people in this place based on what this town is, based on this, blah, 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 blah. I'm more than willing to do that while taking advantage of the fact that the first time around, I didn't spend enough time in these places anyway. So it was kind of a way for me to kill two birds with one stone. But then, of course, the time when even Sony came back and said, we are ready. If you are willing to work with us and collaborate with us on your first four projects that we co-own with you, we're willing to do whatever it is that you deem necessary. And I said, well, the message has been consistent. You change everything to Sananda Maitreya, or I have no interest in working against my own interest. That's already been established. So we came to those conclusions. The bottom line of changing it was simple. At some point, you realize that the name you created, the identity that you created, you don't own anymore. And when you're going through these struggles with them, they were never an artist-friendly company. The ones that I had these tumultuous,
dealings with.
dealings with.
Hmm.
So they let you know, hey, you just that's our property, and we're not the vision you have of post-millennium rock. That's not Black artist music that the way we see, and we want to support you. And the other thing is, any industry, whether it's a film industry or a music industry, is going to be hard pressed to promote and continue to promote what they don't think they can easily replace. So if you're seen as a paradigm shifter, fine, that's all well and good from the artistic side of it, but from the industry side of it, can we duplicate this more? Can we now mint and print this bitch? If you can't, it's not in their best interest, for them to promote Citizen Kane as a film when they've got nothing else for the next 2 years in their catalog in the pipeline that looks anything like Citizen Kane. So you learn all these lessons, and you learn that if you want to go forward, after 2 years of meditation, where I was in a state of dissociation in order to survive, where to the point where if you called me that old name, it might take a few seconds for me to register that you were actually talking to me. In meditations and prayers, I asked the way forward, and I was given in a series of dreams. I'm a Piscean, and I've always placed a lot of stock in dreams.
Hmm.
In a series of dreams, three to be exact, I kept hearing the name Sananda called out by a group of angels that I was always traveling behind, walking behind. By the third time, this name, which was in every dream, so familiar to me, like this Sananda, I would always look around like, hey, who's Sananda? Who's going to answer to this? The third time was the charm where I realized, oh shit, I'm Sananda. I'm Sananda. That's me. And literally, the angels who never faced me in any of the three dreams, literally turned around and faced me and started applauding, like, he gets it. And that was the beginning of it. And I was given, to understand, if you have the courage of heart to take this is the answer you've been waiting for, looking for. And it will even resurrect the other name that they're now suppressing to keep control of you.
How hard was that transition, professionally speaking? Because
No, no
I
much
didn't
more
I didn't know
different.
you existed until 2011. So I was wondering, like, wait, what happened between 94? Like, where's
You were
he at?
busy. I had to give you time to do your other shit because you were laying the foundation for a culture that you're just a very, very huge part of. Okay, but look, the bottom line was, for a long time I had to dissociate myself from that life, that world. So I wasn't going to be performing those songs anyway.
Got it.
So creating a new catalog gave me something to do. For 8 years, I was in a trio. I, I
Mhm.
I still played everything myself on the record, but I went with a trio, which means that I arranged everything with a view towards when you play this live, you're just gonna have three instruments. As an arranger, that was a great, great challenge. I loved it. Arrangers loved. Now you got to write for 12 pieces. Now you got to write for four pieces. You know, we love that.
At one point, were you considering being the new frontman of NXS, or was that just a one-off thing? Or
That is another very interesting story that came about because I had heard a rumor
okay,
that I was joining In Excess. I had heard a
wait, you
rumor.
heard a rumor that you were
I had
joining it?
heard a rumor. I had heard a rumor from a couple people. Hey, what's this about you joining Excess? I had absolutely no idea where this even started. Okay. It was in addressing the rumor through the media that they heard that I was saying no, that they got the idea to ask if I would do it. So it was actually me
So both
debunking a
sides.
rumor. It was while I was debunking a rumor that in the process of debunking the rumor, they heard the rumor and then said, "Hey, let's take a gamble and ask if you'll do it." So I was very good friends with Michael Hutchins.
Yeah,
And so yeah, that's how that happened. It was strange. And then, of course, we did the opening of the Olympic Stadium in Sydney in the year 2000.
right.
Um, and that's what led them to invite me the next year to be Jesus in Godspell. And I was really excited about that because it was like, I grew up doing Godspell in junior high school.
Hmm.
So I knew that like the back of my hand. And that they asked me to play the Jesus character. I was like, dude, that's like, yeah, man, the Australians love these bitches. Yeah, man. It's about time. Because I always felt like he probably looked closer to me than he did to Chris Sarandon or whoever plays this motherfucker in the movies anyway when I was a kid, you know. Um, but the irony is the very day I was meant to get on the plane, the producer and the director got into a huge fight because the director had in order to get me on board, promised I could contribute a song
Hmm.
to the situation to give me another song to sing. And there were already problems
Right.
brewing, but I guess that was the straw that broke the camel's back and literally got a call an hour before I was going to leave for the airport that they had postponed it until they sorted out all this other stuff, by which point I had moved on. But yeah, that rumor was true, and that rumor led to some other stuff. And then eventually they asked if I wanted to be a permanent member, but that was in the very beginning of me going into the transition full time in earnest, and realized it wouldn't have been in my best interest to have lent my energy to that.
So the way you create now, is it when the spirit moves you, or like, are you your final say? Are you your boss? Are you like, okay,
Yes,
um, are you
yes.
in an ideal place now creatively?
I've been in an ideal place creatively um, since the very, very beginning because I was spoiled that I've always had creative control, and the first record was the only time I've ever even made demos. Um, but my answer is like this: I'm 62 years old. I've been doing this my entire life. Who the fuck else should I be listening to but me? I've always believed in my taste as an artist, meaning that if I can tell someone else has made great music, I don't see why all of a sudden it's impossible for me to know that I've done something tasteful or captured something. Um, it is just and the energy that I inherited back into the process of creating when I no longer had to defend myself or answer questions. Or why are you starting the wild card with this kind of banjo-y kind of why are you doing why you gotta I just got tired of all that shit. It's
Man,
just
look, I love when you go dirty. Like the dirtier the shit sound, the most the
yeah,
cassette just
yeah,
drums untuned. I love that shit. Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
love it so much. Look, brother, I cannot emphasize enough how much of a profound. I didn't even get into you. You did a show at the Academy of Music one night in Philadelphia, and I'm walking home from school,
Hmm.
and only because I know the bass line like the back of my hand, your band is sound checking Wiki Wacky by Fatback Band.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
heard the boobity boop 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 boop
yeah,
boop,
yeah, yeah.
and there was half a second where like one of the side doors was open at the Academy of Music, and me, like I'm walking home from school, and you guys are sound checking at the Academy of Music. I'm always like I went to performing arts school like across the street from that school, and would often walk by it and watching. I didn't even know the Fatback version that well, but I knew that bass line, and watching you guys for like 3 minutes, like, and then security kicked us out, but we snuck in the sound check. But yeah, it was such a profound effect on my life of, and I know I sound like a broken record on this podcast. I've been doing this for 7 years. I've I didn't know this is the interview I always wanted in this ideal situation, and I thank you so much for granting me uh the the one man audience to just nerd out and give you your
You're
flowers,
welcome.
man.
I really appreciate the opportunity. When your people contacted us a few weeks ago, I was really like, it was a kind of feeling like finally, you know what I mean? Like, I see you
That's
on,
weird. I
on
just didn't think
thing,
you knew we like
on
not
Fallon. Come on, man, you're all over the fucking place.
see, but I don't know that. I think when you're in it, you're not like
No, I'm into the culture. I mean, basically, I should own shares in YouTube at this point. So, wherever you're doing, I'm catching it, I'm seeing it, and the fact that you got the gig with, with Fallon,
yeah.
and all of that, man, it's just like, your imprint has been huge, your footprint has been huge, and we've really, really needed it because that thing you established, which was kind of in its own way, you taking over from who were we referencing before? That whole
Paul Shaver or
whoever we were referencing before, that they basically had a whole thing, started a whole thing. You also put out an umbrella and brought in a lot of stuff that you nurtured and was really, really important for the culture. And I just thank you. I just really do, because you made excellent, excellent music and work. The productions have been excellent. And I want you to pass on my love to a young brother, D'Angelo, and to Erica as well.
D's gonna be my first phone call like right after now. Like I'm just bursting at the seams, man.
And
Yeah,
tell D'Angelo in particular, I'm proud of him, and that he's everything you kind of suspected he had in him when you first heard Brown Sugar. He's definitely gone beyond that. And like I said, he's even got Scandinavian bitches in Sweden talking about how proud they are of him. So, just pass
well,
that on, okay? And
thank
I
you.
want us to stay in contact. We know we might do this other
We
gig.
will. I'm gonna I'll I'll slide in your DMs and give you my information, brother. All right. Thank you guys so much. On behalf of T and Supreme, this is Questlove signing off, and we'll catch y'all next week. All right. Questlove Supreme. See you.